Last week during youth group, we had the R Foundation come out to church. We got to see some pups, and the kiddos got to hear a presentation by some volunteers there, and it was good. It was really good. In our youth group, we usually have time to eat. We have a program of some sort. We always get together and we play a game. There's some time for some decompression, and then someone always leads Compline, sort of nighttime prayers, which makes Wednesday for me just a really wonderful evening. And then that's also a time when I get to interact with some of our friends that I don't see on a regular basis. This year we've tried to do something new and just concentrate some energy on what's called the verse of the week. Right? And it's just a verse that we'll pluck out of the Bible and try to learn a little bit more about. And our friend Reed actually came up to me this week, and he goes, Nick, he said, can I do that? And I'm like, yeah, take it, brother. How great is that? That our youth are taking ownership of the Word. I love that. But one of our friends this past week said something to me that stopped me in my tracks. It really did. We were talking about how the Bible is presented in different fashions, and this young man said to me, I think it's important that we view the Bible through three lenses. I was intrigued. And he said the three lenses that we should look at the Bible are through the lenses of history, literature, and theology. And if we do that, then it's not just one or the other. And the blending of those views leads to deeper understanding. In his words, it makes sense. And I was listening to him, and I was like, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. So let's do that, shall we? Let's do that with the gospel today. Let's hold the gospel up and look at it through the lenses of history, literature, and theology. Historically, Jesus is walking in the borderlands. He's walking in between Samaria and Galilee, his home. These are two different worlds, I think. Samaritans and Jews were not fond of each other. Let's just say they had history between each other. After the exile, the Samaritans, they intermarried with non-Israelites, and they built their own temple on Mount Gerizim. This led the Hebrew people to view them as religiously impure in some fashion and disloyal to the true worship that was happening in Jerusalem. That's some history for you. So you know that there's a beef. But nevertheless, this is where Jesus meets those 10 lepers. Those 10 lepers who are already on the margins of society. And they call out for mercy from a distance because they're not allowed, because of this impurity, to approach other people. So they have to call out to Jesus from a distance. They're not allowed to come near anyone else. And remarkably, this is where Jesus chooses to meet them. He doesn't go to the city center. He doesn't go to the synagogue. But he is in no man's land, in a place of exclusion. This is where Jesus goes. I tend to think of our parish in this light, especially after our leadership dinner that we had last week. And that's because we've been talking a lot about how stewardship is not just the maintenance of our buildings, right, and our grounds, and sort of what we do with the air conditioner, right? Thank God it's working, right? But it's about mission. It's about spreading God's love. It's about a community that meets people in those in-between spaces. And I think St. Luke's is a place where people who might not fit elsewhere find a home. And in that sense, we are already walking where Jesus is walking, on the border, welcoming, including, and affirming. And so I continue to challenge you to do that. That's stewardship, friends. Stewardship's not just a check, but it's standing where Jesus stands. That's the most important thing. It's standing where Jesus stands, on the threshold where grace meets human need. Now, when we look at this story as literature, Luke tells us this brief story, and I don't think you can escape the fact that there is great irony present and also a deep contrast between what is happening. 10 are healed, right? Only one comes back. Only one comes back to say thank you. And that one, if you go back to the history lesson, he's a Samaritan, right? He's the outsider, right? The one no one expects. This is a beautiful story. It really is. And I think the twist there is meant to catch us off guard. If it doesn't, we need to read it again. Because I think it makes us want to ask questions of ourselves. Like, if we were the one that was healed, would we be the one to turn back and say thank you? Yesterday, I officiated a wedding between two of our friends here at St. Luke's, Robert and Terry. Two people from very different backgrounds, different families, different stories, promising to turn towards one another and towards God in thanksgiving for the rest of their lives. It struck me that their I do was essentially an act of gratitude, an acknowledgement that love itself is a gift. And in that moment, in the vows that they had written themselves, and what they had said, in a moment, their separate lives became one shared story. Gratitude. That is what the Samaritan offers Jesus. He turns back. He sees and he gives thanks. Gratitude transforms this miraculous healing into a relationship between the Christ and him. Just as love transforms two people into one flesh. And so when we look at this story through the lens of theology, this story really isn't about who gets healed. It's about who notices. All 10 received mercy. They were all made clean on their way. Only one recognized grace for what it was. And his gratitude became his salvation. I thought about that gratitude when I met with our altar guild this past week. If you can believe it, we are already talking about Christmas, my friends. We're talking about pine rope and all such things. We're talking about polishing brass and washing the linens, all those quiet, unseen acts of care. And those offerings, too, are acts of recognition and gratitude, too. The Altar Guild says, we see what God is doing here, and we want to make it shine. Right? We're allowed, because of their care, to worship in the beauty of holiness, as the Psalms say. worship is liturgy. And if you think about it, the Samaritans turning back to Jesus is kind of a liturgy too. The Samaritan is doing what we do every Sunday. He's turning around. He's turning back to the focus. He's giving thanks and he's being made whole. That's literally what Eucharist means. Thanksgiving. And so I don't think I'm stretching the story or the narrative too far to say that in some sense, the leper's story becomes our story. And this season that we find ourselves in, stewardship season, right, is our chance to turn back. We've seen what God has done here at St. Luke's. We've seen it in what it does in the lives of our youth and how they can think deeply about their faith. I see it in couples pledging lifelong love to one another, in leaders gathering around the table dreaming about what is next for us, in the altar guild who prepare the sanctuary so that Christ might be made known in a more tangible way, in the choir who is readying themselves for the Christmas season by holding a retreat this afternoon, and in this community who holds one another close through every season of their lives. That is special. And if it's yours, it's yours. But you have to decide that. And what is more, wherever you land, in giving authentically of ourselves, in serving and participating in the life of this parish, whatever parish you're from, gratitude often meets generosity. I see that every day. And when that happens, something holy happens. Like the Samaritan, right? We realize, we discover that we're not just being healed, but that through us, things are being made whole. Through Christ's relationship with us, things are being made whole. And so, my friend Ransom's insight was right and good and true. Scripture really does come alive when we look through all three lenses of history, literature, and theology. When we do that all at once, I think those lenses become for us stained glass. Each piece has its own color, it has its own shape, but yet it fits together. And when the light of Christ shines through it, when it shines through them all together, we realize what before us is something that is beautiful. So thank you, my friend. This is happening at St. Luke's right now. God's light is shining through your stories, shining through your gifts, your gratitude, in dinners, in weddings, in youth gatherings, in altar guild meetings, and in the solemn holiness of Sunday worship. May we, like the Samaritan, see what God has done. May we turn back in thanksgiving, and may our gratitude make us whole.